Thanks for listening. If you like the candid discussion and are seeking the truth behind the mainstream narrative, then please subscribe and share. Not only am I grateful, but those who seek the truth and wish to empower themselves and their family's health, freedoms, and future will also be grateful. Hey everybody, I've got Dr. Lona Cook here today. She is a published author and now has just recently released her second book. She will hold that up for you. So great. Thanks for being here today, Dr. Lona.
Thanks for having me.
Little more this way. Yeah, right there now. Back center. Hold it. Bring it up. There it is. Reclamation.
The evolution of a hot mess.
Love it. So, first of all, you've been working on that book. You started before COVID or just started and finished during COVID?
Yeah, I started during COVID. It was brewing in my mind for a while, and the gift of COVID offered me extra staff in my office. So I worked less and got to write a book during that time.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So for those who haven't, I got the pleasure to a heads up on knowing that it was being released. So I was looking for it, and Dr. Lona gave us the signal. And so I already read like almost more than 3/4 of it. I'm almost done, but great writing style. So let's talk about why that book now for you. What was it that brought that to light?
Why now? I don't know. It had just been sitting on my heart and kind of on my back that I wanted to do something that was outside the chiropractic space. My previous writings have been more geared for chiropractors and not so much the public. And I looked back on this last 10 or 15 years in my life, and so much of what chiropractic has offered me in its teachings of healing and looking within and how life happens from this inside out perspective, meaning like life is happening through you, not to you. And I really wanted to put my story into a context where someone hopefully can read it and get something from it and maybe apply it to their own hot mess. I say that jokingly and lovingly and truthfully, to hopefully evolve and keep changing, because that's what I think we're here to do.
Very cool. So you had said, and I'm not going to be a spoiler. There's no spoiler alert here because I'm not spoiling anything. You were to shed some light on your history. You became a chiropractor as the result of what kind of experience? What happened and what brought you into this?
Well, I grew up in chiropractic. I didn't know that many people didn't have a chiropractor. So my family, I was a colicky baby who got adjusted. And I just thought it was totally normal that periodically my dad would take us to the chiropractor. So that was really my paradigm, was that chiropractic was normal and that people went just like they went to the dentist. I remember sitting in my first day of chiropractic school and they said something along the lines of, this is a tough profession because you always have to tell people why they need to come back. And I remember thinking, I was like, I don't get it. I don't get why that's tough. And I don't get why you're telling us that. Because that wasn't my paradigm. Now, what I didn't know at the time was that my grandfather, who passed a few years ago, he had actually been adjusted since he was young. So it was something that, he had been lucky enough that his mother took them because it was more affordable than going to the medical doctor. And then he actually ended up becoming a veterinarian. So he took his 4 kids to the chiropractor. And then my dad, when they had me and I was colicky, knew to tell my mom she needs to go to the chiropractor. And so it had become very normal in my family, but I didn't know many other people didn't know those things.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting when it's your paradigm, when you grow up with it. I have a similar story that my teammates and I would get adjusted. And my teammates were like, well, I thought you were hurt, or what are you doing? Why do you go to a chiropractor? And it's like, what do you mean you don't? Mm-hmm. And it was just part of our upbringing. So with that formulation, you went to school down here in Madison, University of Wisconsin.
Yes.
And you already knew you were going to go to chiropractic school, correct?
Yep.
At that point. Mm-hmm. And you had your school decided.
I didn't know which school I was going to, but I knew I wanted to go into chiropractic. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so how'd you decide that? Because we have many students. In fact, I have some in my office that are in that direction as well. And it was really a conundrum for them to decide. And what I chose and why I chose what I chose was very different. I looked at it differently than they're looking at it. So how did you figure that out?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't do what I did, knowing what I know now. So I knew I wanted to be a chiropractor, which was the good part of it. In 11th grade, I shadowed my chiropractor, and I think I already knew. I just really liked what she did, and I liked how she worked with her hands and helped people, and it just seemed pretty neat. And so I actually ended up in undergrad working for her for a couple summers, and that solidified it for me that this is what I wanted to do. And with that said, I went into Madison, got the full Madtown experience, did not, let's say, do any extracurriculars outside of bartending and school. And so I just went to what was close. I knew my chiropractor had gone to Palmer. Palmer was going through a lot of changes at the time. So she had said, I don't know where to send you. I think wherever you go, you're going to have to like go to things on the weekends to learn parts of chiropractic that you may not get in school. And so I chose Northwestern based off of proximity and the fact that Minneapolis sounded more exciting than Iowa to me at my young 22-year-old self. Now knowing what I know most of the schools pay for you to come out and visit them. I would have taken advantage of that because there is definitely other schools that I should have checked out.
Well, and that's true. They never, when I graduated as well, they didn't escort you down to the school to have a great experience and show you around and entice you to be at that school. So that's a pretty cool story because that's the reality of figuring things out as you go, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Trial and error.
You've contributed. I'm going to shifting gears here. You contribute on another level too with women chiropractors. I would love for you to talk about that and how your entrepreneurial skills that you've developed over time have led you down that path and what you're finding with that work.
Yeah, well, there's lots of cool things happening in the world for women chiropractors right now and just chiropractors in general. I feel like 2020 has helped us in many ways. In my mind, it's again, a great time to be a chiropractor. I think people trust us more than ever. They know us. They see us more often than a lot of other providers. And we're not selling them pills or surgeries. So, just the state of the world, I think, has led to people feeling like, who do I trust? I need to trust someone that I have a relationship. I see face to face. They put their hands on me. Like your chiropractor is like almost like family to you sometimes. And so for male or female thinking about going into this profession, I think it's a wonderful time to enter the field if you're excited about it and passionate about it and realize that you need to have good like personal skills and you're going to work on that. So with women chiropractors, there's an organization right now that's a nonprofit called Women Chiropractors, and they are doing a lot of cool things trying to not only help women chiropractors, but be a force for uniting in the profession. I think they've got like 7,000 or 8,000 members, and they're doing cool things like helping women who've maybe stepped out of practice for a while find their way back into practice. I know, Wade, you and I think a couple of years ago actually talked about this compared to dentistry. If we were seeing the amount of people that dentists see, like there's not enough chiropractors, and there's certainly not enough chiropractors who are more in our breadth of chiropractic, like a vitalistic, a self-healing, wanting to work with the intelligence of the body versus more of a mechanistic view. And so I just love the work they're doing, trying to bring more people, more women into the profession, and also women that are already in the profession that maybe left to have kids or for whatever reason, bringing them back in. So check them out if you're a woman listening to this, or a man. Women Chiropractors nonprofit is pretty sweet what they're doing for the profession right now. And with that note, we do a mastermind up here in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, that is heavily attended by women, although we have 3 men this year that are part of it. And it's just coming together. It's a small group of us, about 20 or 30 of us that practice with similar intentions, and we want to keep growing together. So I saw an opportunity for that was something that I wanted and my team needed as well. And so we created it. So I like doing fun things like that, just like the book. I like getting to do creative things and then figuring out a way to have a business around them.
Yeah, you are pretty great at that. And I love your energy that you bring. Obviously, we've had conversations about that. Dr. Lona is also the past president of the CSW. So I've got to work alongside Lona and watch her grow tremendously fast as a leader, as well as a great clinician and entrepreneur. And she's just got a big vision. So that's what I enjoy discussing with you too. You had mentioned something that should not be overlooked, and that is, you mentioned mechanistic and vitalistic. And sure, I know that any chiropractor listening here knows exactly what you're talking about, but I get plenty of listeners that are not. So I want you to describe, if you can, in your terminology, the best way to throw someone off when they're asking a question. No, I'm just kidding. The difference between the mechanistic versus vitalistic, and why, or rather how, why you think it's important, number one, and how that might help a patient choose their chiropractor.
Yeah. Okay. To make it simple, I would say we notice something about chiropractic that's different. And I think a lot of offices are unified around this. So you may know chiropractic as this, but to me, chiropractic, where it began and where I see it going is in this vitalistic camp, which means we recognize that the body is self-healing and self-regulating, and there's a power working within us that we're not in control of, but it's part of what connects us to everything in the universe. So I think it's cutting edge that back in the day, D.D. Palmer had the ideas for chiropractic that he did, because to me, he was on to like quantum science before there really was that type of terminology. But what I mean by that is vitalistic honors that there's like a mind, body, spirit connection. You are more than the sum of your parts. There's, yes, your physical body, and there's also your spiritual, emotional, mental aspects of you that are the energy you carry. And that certainly, in my mind, should be taken in to the doctor's experience of how they're helping you, because we aren't just physical bodies. And so part of the reason why I love chiropractic so much is when you really strip it down, our nervous system is how we're constantly adapting to not only physical stimuli in our environment or internally, but also mental, emotional, and spiritual things that are happening to us. It's processed through this nervous system. So if I'm adjusting the spine and helping that nervous system have better rapport, it's going to help that being on all those levels as well, because that nervous system is the channel through which life operates. To me, that is what chiropractic is. And that vitalistic look, honoring that there is a connection we have to something bigger, is where like miracles and true healing can take place. I don't control that as the clinician. That person does, but I'm going to hold space for that to happen and recognize my role within that for that person, because they're coming to me for help, versus mechanism, which is like you are your parts. And it's okay if I take some out, or I maybe douse it with chemicals. And I'm not trying to make that sound all bad, but it is a very different viewpoint on the doctor's role within the healing process as well. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think you described it really, really well, which comes back to your book. And it comes back to why you do what you do with your blogging, with what you do with your vision, with how you take care of yourself and your community, with how you raise your kids, your interactions. And I'm going to toot a horn for Lona here with specifics too. In the book, what I loved about how you wrote and how you write is you have come to terms with who you are, and you obviously love yourself. And I'd say that respectfully and considerately, that you have to love yourself first. And I know it's in a humble way. It's with humility. It's not with boast or coming from egoic nature, right? So that premise says you respect, and that that's how Dr. Lona leads. So Dr. Lona leads. This is from outside looking in. Mm-hmm. She leads from the inside. And you can tell, and that's why she's attractive in her practice. And I mean more than physically attractive. I mean, she has an attractive energy, which you're all getting. So I wanted to help highlight her book because I believe in what she's doing in her vision. I believe that she has a great capacity to lead, even greater than she already is. And I just want to share how you can be affected by how she writes and how her book is, because it's very authentic. And that's one of the things, that's the only spoiler I'm going to give, is that you're going to enjoy talking with Lona, because that's how it feels reading the book.
Thanks. I appreciate that a lot.
Are you aware of the fact that women of the household make 80% of the health decisions? In my clinical experience of 27 years, I see way too many women struggling with hormonal, glandular, and chronic low energy and fatigue syndromes. How well can you be expected to lead when your health and energy are not where you need it? Thyroid, adrenal, and autoimmune diseases are all too common, and the real causes are not being addressed with drugs. There are natural ways to restore balance and ultimately reclaim your feminine physiology. If you're ready to learn and get results to better empower your health, healing, and that of your family, then we think you'll love this journey of discovery and lasting results. Check out The Feminine Carnivore on Facebook and join our 3- and 5-day challenges to reset your body's healing potential.
I think, one thing I've noticed in feedback from the book so far is that I feel like people are telling me deeper level things about themselves after they read it. And at one thing that came back to me is a lot of times when we're in these leadership roles, whether we're talking about leading at the state association or leading in your practice to your patients, they may see you as one of your personas, but they don't know the backstory that's got you to this point, or where you're headed, or what you see for yourself, or what your internal experience is. And we all have that. And I think some of us have beat ourselves up so badly that we don't allow ourselves to step into what's next, even though we all have backstories. And so one of the things I wanted to do was show like how I have come to terms with some of my backstory and how I can see it. You can use your story either to propel you forward or to handcuff you. And, everyone has different highs and lows, but essentially we all have highs and lows. And so hopefully that's helpful to read and process your own highs and lows and use it as fuel to go on to what you do want for yourself, not to hold you back.
Yeah. And I get the impression you're not very attached. Like you're as you've grown, you become less attached to labels, experiences, and tried to see, like you mentioned earlier, holding space. Mm-hmm. You and I have talked on a number of levels, like not having all the answers at times, but recognizing they're going to come. We just don't know yet. And it can be a confusing time and it can be an uncertain time, but life's unfolding. Stay in it, stay paying attention. And, but your optimism through that point, and I want to say it's not blind optimism, because to me, to be optimistic, and I've looked at this from many different ways, from a pessimistic standpoint to an optimistic standpoint, to some old writings found in Good to Great with one of our old Navy prisoners of war who looked at optimism versus pessimism and realized that the optimists, when we're holding a day as to though that's when my world's going to change, yes, it'll get better tomorrow, it'll get better tomorrow. And if that doesn't happen, they lose faith because they're still counting on that day, that timing that they create in their mind, versus optimism, just knowing that you're going to figure it out and you just keep figuring things out as you go.
Yeah.
And you seem to trust that process. Is that correct?
Yeah, it goes back to these roots in vitalism. Chiropractic's first principle is that there is a major premise. There is intelligence in everything. And I think one of the things that radically changed me was starting to see that when I humbled myself to not always having to have the answers for myself as to what needed to come next or how it needed to look. And that is a letting go on some level. That usually how it actually showed up was far more interesting or better than what I would have pushed for had I just tried to egoically push it. And so I still do that. I'm not trying to say I still do that, but I can catch myself in it better anyways. And so same, Wade, I know we've had many conversations on this. This past year, there were times where I was pushing and I was attached to wanting to have certain things figured out in the state of the world. And as I had to let that go, because ultimately, I don't think hardly any of us really know what's happening on a larger scale. You realize that I trust, and whether that you call that God or universe, that there is a plan unfolding on some level. And whether that's with me in this physical form, getting it a certain way, or who knows, there could be reincarnation. I'm not attached to what that looks like next. That's not my job. It brings you back to the present moment. And almost all the kind of great writers and spiritual teachers, they tell you your power is in the moment that you're in. And so to instead of being focused on trying to control the future or trying to regret the past, to try and just let go of those things, man, we'd have a lot happier people for sure. And your power is back there. So I'm not saying don't prepare for the future. I'm just saying hold it more loosely. I've had to teach myself that, or have certain interruptions in your life scheduled in that allow you to just go with the flow more. It's like people, when you talk about magnetism, people want to be around people who just feel good because they're not so attached to all these things they can't control. So yes, I think for all of us, that's a great lesson to just keep rolling with it and try and be playful with life, because we're not going to figure it all out. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, every time we think we do, or we, the old adage is share your plans with God, and better have a great sense of humor because it's different. So that comes back to some of the why. You said, we talked about timing. You had some things you were carrying on your back, and you had some, I anticipate, we didn't talk about this specifically, but I anticipate the 2 years the 6-year program you were in with the CSW from pre to VP to president. It's a 6-year term, folks, where it's a commitment. And then the presidency, and she's been voted in by her peers. And that commitment took some time away from your family, took some time away from your dreams and what you were creating. And so all of a sudden you were able to start creating again while we went through this uncertain, scary time. And I started writing as well, and you and I have shared a bit about that. But the completion part, that's what I love, is you were able to follow through on what you really wanted to share. And what I like about this last piece, and folks, this is not something, I mean, there's a real story here, and that's different than fabricating something. And that gives all the opportunity to whoever reads that to be more themselves. This is part of the definition. When we talk about follow your bliss, but move forward, and province therein falls into place. And that's basically a shredding of Von Goethe, right? Von Goethe's quote. And so I don't have it in front of me to recite that. But the bottom line is, when Lona puts her heart out there, the impact of these waves, that was her being present to say, I don't know the impact. And I'm sharing this for you to bring up a thought and a question back to you. If that's the case, and you recognize this vital force, is your faith really blind and just optimistic? Or is it grounded in a premise that somewhere in there is not just a belief, it's a knowing? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, I think where I start the book off is what I would attribute to my waking up. And that was, I was actually held up at gunpoint in Costa Rica. And then shortly thereafter, all my plans kind of went out the window as to where I thought I was going to go to practice and do life and all of that. And it was like in that kind of failure almost that I realized like the way I had been operating wasn't going to work anymore. And I needed to give myself a way to do it differently. And I hadn't ever thought about like my persona before, and some of the good about it and some of the really not so good about it. And so as I allowed myself to just change even slightly, some weird shit started to happen. Like a woman called my house to volunteer her time in my first practice that I decided to open. And she ended up being like the most perfect assistant to start with, and she was volunteering for free, and I didn't know her. And so it was like after several of those very mysteriously weird things happened, I started to say, what is happening here? Like life had gone from feeling quite rocky to like, oh, that was easy. I just got a business loan. Oh, here's my first assistant. Oh, I signed on my lease. And there was such a juxtaposition in my life. I wasn't in control of it. Certainly not. All I had done was basically say, okay, I give up for a minute. I give up. I'm not going to force right now. And then it was like, boom, 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 boom. All this fell into place. And after seeing it, and that's what I think most people miss, is they miss the like juxtaposition that is already present in their life. They're just either moving on to the next thing so fast they don't catch the serendipity and the synchronicity that is happening. But if they could and pause and breathe and maybe go further into the good feeling and less into the bad feeling, their life would transform. And so what I wanted to show was how very real that is. It's not this airy fairy stuff. It's like moment by moment, paying more intention internally than externally, which is a muscle you have to flex. You have to get better at it. And some would call it intuition. Some would say they're, doing God's will. I don't really care personally what you call it. But I think it is a very different way to live. And you had alluded to like, is it blind faith? No, I think actually it's bigger vision than you can have otherwise. It's like, I know that if I push for something to happen, and it's not supposed to happen, there's probably going to be a way out somewhere along the way where I see like either I have to ask myself sometimes, like, is it I'm not supposed to do this, or is it that I have fear and I need to push through because I'm holding myself back from this? And that's again by like know thyself, right? Like you said like, you love yourself. I do love myself. I also trust myself at this point that not that I'm going to make every right decision, because that's not going to happen, but that I'm going to pay attention and take care of myself in a way where hopefully I can keep being of service in the way that I was birthed here to do. And I think there's a lot of people walking around on our earth right now that don't know why they're here. And that's part of where like slowing down for a second and trying to really ask yourself, what do I love? What lights me up? And going more into those feelings will help you live such a much more empowered life. But we've not been taught that real well. And so that's part of what I hope this book can help some people, is to like shed some of the baggage and allow yourself to just ask some of those questions. Because when we all start to walk more energetically whole with what we came here to do and who we really want to be, then, that's how I think we transform not only ourselves, but other parts of our world. So.
Yeah, you certainly allow yourself to give permission. You doing that does give permission for others to share their light as well, which is great. Mm-hmm. I love the way you just described it. That might be, just drop the mic from there.
Thanks, Wade.
So do you want to show your book one more time so people can see that?
Sure. This is like a brain exercise right now. Like
right on. You did better at that. So see, you're already working that muscle. Woo! Nice work. That's perfect.
Thanks.
And how do you pronounce that?
Reclamation, the evolution of a hot mess.
Okay. And who's the hot mess in that story?
Nobody actually, but me. Yeah.
All right. Got it. Yeah. So where can
people
find that?
We all have permission to be hot messes. That's just like all good. And one thing sometimes people will ask too is like, how do you do everything? It's like, I don't, I'm still a hot mess. I just have really good people also around me that are okay with being supportive in other ways that maybe I'm not strong. And then they can help me take whatever we're creating to the next level too. So I think that's part of it too, is knowing you don't have to be all things. It's okay to have areas of your life that aren't your best work. So.
Yeah. Don't I know that? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of spots I need help with.
Me too.
So where can people find you, Lona?
Well, they can find the book on Amazon. And then I have a website that's just my name, drlonacook.com. So LONACOOKDR in front of it. Or
no period,
on social media. DR, yep.
Mm-hmm. Or on social media. Okay, awesome. We'll have those in the link as well. Thanks so much for your time. Any parting thoughts? You already gave some great ones, but there may be something you want to add.
No, just thanks so much, Wade. You're so supportive of all this, and I really, truly appreciate it.
Hey, you're doing good work, of course, and of course I support you, and I want to see this book fly because people need to read it, and understand that philosophy, because your philosophy bleeds through it as a human being. That's what's awesome.
Thank you.
So thanks for being here and taking the time. And for those of you who watched, hopefully you can share this with folks and check out the book. It's you won't be sorry.
Mm. Thanks.
And I have an autographed copy coming sooner or later, I know.
Yeah, you can have an autographed copy for sure.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a good day, folks.
Okay, my fellow health warriors, it's time to head over to iTunes, franklyspeakingdrwade.com. There, you can rate, review, and subscribe, as well as share, so more of our brothers and sisters can grow to realize their voice and their health freedom. Speaking up means you matter, so get on it. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements or views expressed are not medical advice and are not meant to replace the advice of your medical doctor. This podcast, including Dr. Wade Anderson and his guests, disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects you may experience from the specific use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse and accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about the guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for such services or products. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical condition, consult your licensed physician.